Right now, if someone you love died, you know exactly what you'd do. You'd pick a spot, you'd dig, or pay someone to dig. You'd maybe put flowers down, say a few words, and walk away leaving them there. On purpose. You've probably never thought about why you'd do that. It's just what humans do. But here's the thing. This isn't a modern habit. It's not even a civilized habit. Burying the dead is one of the oldest deliberate behaviors on this planet. Older than writing, older than farming, older, possibly, than modern humans themselves. And that last part is where this gets weird. Because the deeper scientists dig, literally, the more it looks like we weren't the first ones to do this. So the question is, who buried the dead first, and did they even have to be smart enough for it to count? Let's go back to where most people assume the story starts. For decades, textbooks taught that deliberate burial began with Homo sapiens, modern humans, big brains, full language, the whole package. Sites like Shanidar Cave in Israel, roughly 100,000 years old, showed bodies placed carefully in pits, sometimes with objects beside them. Case closed, right? Smart humans, sad feelings, graves. Except then, researchers found something that didn't fit the story at all. Deep inside a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, cavers in 2013 squeezed through a gap so narrow it's called Superman's crawl. You can only get through it with one arm stretched out in front of you. At the bottom, they found bones. Hundreds of them. Belonging to a species nobody had ever seen before. They named it Homo naledi. Here's what makes this important. Homo naledi had a brain about a third the size of yours. Small, chimp-sized roughly. By every old assumption about human evolution, a brain that small shouldn't be capable of abstract thought, symbolism, or grief. And yet, the bodies weren't scattered like animals dragged them in. They weren't washed there by water. Researcher Lee Berger and his team argued the bodies were placed, deliberately, deep in a cave that would have required tools, fire, and serious effort to even reach. No easy predator access. No accident. On purpose. Think about that. A species with a brain a third the size of ours may have carried their dead through total darkness, into one of the hardest to reach places on Earth, just to leave them there. Same. Yeah, I wouldn't do that for a stranger. That takes intention. Now, I have to be honest with you, because good science stays honest. This claim is controversial. Plenty of researchers argue the evidence isn't conclusive enough, that natural processes could explain the bone placement without any ritual involved. It's still being debated in real time, which is honestly kind of rare for something this old. We're watching the argument happen live. But even if Homo naledi turns out to be inconclusive, the pattern doesn't stop there. Because Neanderthals, a completely different, non-sapiens human species, were doing something even harder to explain. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists found Neanderthal remains dating back over 60,000 years, and clustered around one skeleton, they detected pollen. Concentrated, clumped, not randomly scattered like wind-blown pollen normally would be. The original interpretation, in the 1960s, was dramatic. The flower burial. A Neanderthal, laid to rest with flowers. Later scientists pushed back. Maybe burrowing rodents dragged the pollen in, they said. The debate raged for decades. But recent excavations at the same site found more burials, more clustering, more patterns that are hard to explain as accident. The flower theory isn't proven, but it also refuses to fully die. Here's what all of this adds up to. Burial might not be a Homo sapiens invention at all. It might be something deeper, something baked into what it means to be a human, in the broadest sense of that word. Not one species idea, a pattern that kept independently showing up, again and again, in different branches of our family tree. By the time actual Homo sapiens show up burying their dead with real intention, like at Sungir in Russia, around 34,000 years ago, where two children were buried head-to-head wearing thousands of hand-carved ivory beads, we weren't starting something new. We were just the latest species to do it. So here's the full picture. Somewhere around 300,000 years ago, a small-brained species may have carried bodies into darkness on purpose. Tens of thousands of years later, Neanderthals may have laid flowers over their dead. And eventually, modern humans took that same instinct and turned it into ritual, religion, and grief as we know it. Which brings us back to you, standing at that grave, putting the flowers down. You're not performing some invented modern custom. You're doing something that other kinds of humans who weren't even your species, may have already been doing hundreds of thousands of years before your species existed. Maybe intelligence was never the reason we bury our dead. Maybe it's just what happens when something can love. If this one messed with your head a little, that's kind of the whole point of this channel. Go look up Shanidar Cave. Tell me what you think.